Green. I think it's just something that we all have in common. We all have, we probably have a whole lot more, but we know about because there's sure different. So as I was thinking about this lesson today, and then just thinking about undertone and sun, I should go on. Green, see what pops up. Yeah. So a couple of things that popped up was music. Okay. Lots of songs have been written over the course of time on the subject of green changing. Back in 1958. All I have to do.
Bunch of old timers.
In the 1970s, okay, young man by the name of Kenny Holmes sang a song. Hey, Brett, you want to bring it? Absolutely. I like dreaming. I like dreaming. Closing my eyes and you take it away. Like holding you close, touching your finger, even if it's in my mouth. It's nobody's going to get this one. Okay. In the 1973, a group called Arrows. Arrows fits out a song called Dream On. Dream On.
It's using this.
Yeah, there you go. In the 1990s, Dream of Love. That song is near my heart because my firstborn daughter was about 8, 9 months old. Okay, and when I'm doing daddy duty, mommy's singing that, I got her, and I would put that song on, and I would catch it. And I put my 9 months old on. So when that song comes on, it's for my mind. The mamas and the papas had a song called I Was Born to Dream. Mamas and the papas. So the list goes on. You get the point. But when you Google dreams, you think positive. Okay, so I continued my search and said, okay, what are some other things about dreaming? Well, here's a slide I'm going to show you.
Arms off.
On recurring. So hopefully you can see that. One eye. Yeah. Look at the top.
Okay, you're gonna have.
People fall in here. I have absolutely. The good news is I've never hit the ground.
No.
Back at school all the time. Getting back at school and being unprepared for an important thing. You guys all experience that? Southern Adventist University in the 1980s, I'm unprepared for a test. So thankful. Anyway, so dreams. And so even though we have music, it's largely there's not a lot of positive in there. Those are usually almost more than everything. So this issue of dreams continues to be an enduring source of mystery to scientists and psychologists. They ask questions: why do they occur? What causes them? Can we control them? Oh, okay, but why do they need? Right? So dreams are very interesting. Some bad facts on dreams. We may not remember dreaming, but everyone is thought to dream between 3 and 6 times per night. Each dream lasts between 5 and 20 minutes. So you've got this stuff going on all night. And around 95% of the dreams are forgotten by the time that we wake up. There's the scientific stuff for you. There was several theories about why we dream. Dreams are really part of the sleep cycle or they serve another purpose. Number one, offline memory process in which the brain consolidates consolidates learning and memory tasks. The cognitive stimulation of real life experiences as dreaming is a subsystem of the waking default network, the part of the mind active during dreaming. I'm not even sure what that is, but I can dumb this down for being number one. I think that you would dream about things that have been heavy on our mind. Dream about things that serve no random purpose, whatever you have no idea. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to explain it. I really don't. But you have to ask yourself the question: does God use dreams?
Just as him.
Very clearly.
That's the speaker.
Very clearly. We have multiple examples in the Bible where God uses dreams.
Pettijohn.
Really gets that in today's lesson. But in that situation, we have the ability to look back on it and see what was happening. So it's happening presently. That's a different story. How do you know what God is saying to you? What's interesting about it is God continues to use dreams. You have to wonder, why is he doing it? Because it's not very effective. Because you forget it, right? But then again, true, you know, have you ever been in a situation where you said, I've been here before?
That's the key.
I've been there, but I can't repeat it. I can't tell you how many times it's happened. The tough thing about it, that if I'm talking to you about your history of birthday, and I remember doing that, well, what I don't remember is what the next sentence is. Say something more. Not like if you use that information. You're forced to. Why is that? And the opposite. Thank God that was a great. And we are all these things that they are. So the bottom line is. Then issues. Or the significant part of the universe. What would be your biggest? Power, losing absolutely losing power. Really, really I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the last several presidents that I can think of that served. And when they passed it on, they aged a lot more than they. There's no way for them. Once you have it. So, as we move on to chapter 2 of Daniel, it's a long chapter, about 49 verses, and so we don't have to read all of it, but there's only 5 sections that we've got. So what we're going to do is we're going to dissect the chapter into 5 sections. In each section, I'll just give you kind of a high-level overview of what it says. And then we'll talk about, okay, there's some lessons learned. Now, we tend to think, so I always say, going into that, Daniel is a apocalyptic prophetic book, which it is. That's not all. There's a whole lot of good stuff on there that we tend to overlook. Applies to our everyday life, all the time. We tend to be focused on the general thing. So, just one word about thoughts. And if you ask a question about it, I'm not going to answer. We're not going to talk about politics. We've got a lot of this. Future chapters. So today, what did we learn from the book of Daniel? Today. All right, ready to go? Here we go. Okay, section 1, we have a troubled and a very, very angry king. Here's the summary. Number 1, Nebuchadnezzar could not sleep, as we long discussed. He had these bad dreams, woke up, and he just said, this is terrible. Okay, so what did he do? He called his advisory group. I'm not going to call it a cabinet, but I'm going to call it his advisory group. Okay, made up of magicians, astrologers, sorcerers, etc. Why did he have a group of people like that? This is what I learned from Dr. Stefanovic, that I did not know. I read in his commentary. Back in those days, astrology was the big thing now. Okay? They thought astrology was work of God. Marduk was this God, and all this information was up in the stars, and somehow that got. So you had these astrologers and magicians that were interpreting that information. And so therefore, Americans said, hey, I've got a problem. I'm going to lean on my advisory board, and they came in and said, hey, I want you to tell me my dream. They said, we'll be happy to interpret your dream. No. I want you to tell me this. Happy to interpret it. What's interesting, just sidebar about something. Nebuchadnezzar knew the purple, but he was a strong observer of Marduk in the astrology system, at least in public. However, the fact that they could not tell him the dream, in my opinion, says that he had doubts about that. We'll see. Not inspired, don't know, but anyway. So he demanded that they tell him what he dreamed. They said, no. He said, look, if you don't tell me what I dreamed, I'm going to have you torn from limb to limb and have your house. And they said again, please tell us the dream. And he said, look, you're stalling and I'm not going to follow. So he asked him again, and this was their response. The astrologers replied to the king, no one on earth can tell the king his dream, and no king, however great and powerful, has ever asked such a thing of any magician, enchanter, or astrologer. The king's demand was still in his jackets. Okay, and you know pajamas. Okay, see interpreting, good deal. Thank you. And I think he was wearing a nightshirt. Okay, and I think this is what his nightshirt said.
Yes.
He had it, right? He had it. I have had my patients tested and I am negative. And so he came back and said, I'm demanding that all of you be killed. He issued the decree. I'm done with you. I'm done. Here we go. That's the end of section 1. Okay. Anything anybody wants to talk about? I've got some stuff, so not to worry if you don't have anything, but yes, okay.
One thing that if you read on verse number 1, that he was in his second year as a king. And when we assume like leadership positions, we know what it's like our first and second year. We are still unsure. We're still figuring it out. We're still in some fear of what can go right or wrong. So it's interesting that God chose to give him this dream right at the beginning of his kingdom or his experience as a king. And I wonder, and that's when we need the Lord the most, right at the beginning of our leadership. And if you think about Solomon, there was the same, right at the beginning, God asks him, a question, and he sees like a dream on the question. So there is a correlation there. And I never thought about what you're saying about him not really totally trusting the guys, but I always thought it was funny. You wanted them to tell his dream, and he has not forgotten it. It's not like Pharaoh. He knew what he dreamed about, but he has no clue what that meant. But he felt that dream was a different one. So I wonder if some of us know how to discern when the dreams we have is a dream, a different one from God. Yeah, boy, great question. Do you have I don't have the answer to that. No, I don't, but my mom, she has different dreams and she tells us things. Like when I was 8 or 9, she said, I had a dream that you were hit by a car. I would go to school on the bus by myself. She said, she went and she hid in a place and she saw that I would cross in front of the bus. She tells me, don't do that. I had this dream that you're going to be hit by a car. Oh my. I think no, I don't know the time later. I did that again and I was hit by a car. So there are some dreams that she tells us that she said it was a month later.
Okay.
So it's like there are dreams that she dreams about something crazy that happened in the house. She dreamed about like fire, and there was this flood in the house when I was 1 year old, was like hit by the, so she sees things in a different way. So this is the weird thing. So some people has it.
Clearly, yeah, okay.
So I don't have any dream that's like, I don't feel I have any one of those.
That you know of, we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Elmer, you have a comment?
Well, I was thinking about what the king was asking of the astrologers. I mean, if you are a CPA and someone comes to you, I need you to tell me how best to avoid paying taxes. Okay, let me see your finances. Give me all your receipts and so forth. No, you got to do it without. Or a physician. You're going to heal me or I'm going to kill you. What do you mean? What are your symptoms? Well, I can't tell you. You have to figure. It's impossible. Impossible without God.
That is the message, and we're going to keep coming back to that over and over again. Couple of comments. Yes, Brian.
I was just gonna say, there's part of this story, if you think about it, as a biography, we don't know. And to me, that's the interesting part of reading biographies of famous people is you know the important parts. You don't know their upbringing, the background. He's a new king, probably mentored by his father.
Mhm.
Who knows what kind of experience his father had with the astrologers? Maybe Nebuchadnezzar had seen him abused by, power grabbing by this astrologer group. But I think your point is appropriate in the cartoon. He's done with them. And he's using
over
this
it.
opportunity to clean house.
That's a great point. It did seem that he reached his breaking point very quickly, right? And so it's a great point to think there's probably been all kinds of stuff leading up to that. And one of the things that was brought out in the commentary is this probably signaled a low point in the Babylonian history where this whole astrology system kind of came to a head. It was probably a house divided to fall. Interesting, probably not overly important, but don't try to pull a fast one on the king. The more they tried to please him, the angrier he got. And it's not always it's not always a great thing to be a member of an elite group because the pressure is high. The other thing about this is think about Nebuchadnezzar's leadership style. Now, part of me, I'm sitting here critical and say towards these wise men and say, why aren't you more transparent? Why don't you just tell him you don't know? Just come to him and say, I don't know. Well, he probably was unwilling to accept that because of his style. Okay. His style says, you tell me the dream. If you tell it to me, I'm going to lavish you with gifts. If you don't, I'm going to kill you. Okay. Well, if you don't know the answer, you really have no choice but to make something up. So it's really a very interesting set of facts there. And I'm really glad that his leadership style is not as prevalent today as it used to be for all of us. Okay. Daniel's request. And we'll come to this section in what's saying. So remember, the command was go kill everybody. All right. Daniel was a part of the group. He was a part of the remember at the very end of chapter 1, he and his friends got promoted to this wise men group. All right. And so therefore he was on the list to be taken care of. And so Arioch shows up, says, guess what? Your number just got called. Daniel says, what? What's going on? Help me understand what has caused the king to come up with such a harsh decree. Well, after hearing this, Daniel went immediately to the king. It doesn't. Think about Esther. This was not a risk-free move on Daniel's part. Okay. I was always thought when Esther couldn't approach the king, I thought, well, maybe that was just her, but that was probably just anybody. But she took a risk to approach the king, and we know what happened. Daniel did the same thing. He goes back to the king and he says, please, basically, king, can we have some more time? And the king granted him some more time. There was no details of that exchange. Daniel went, king said yes. All right. So what does Daniel do? He goes home immediately. He gets his friends, and what do they do first? They pray. They pray. And that night, God answered the prayer by revealing in a vision to Daniel what the king's dream was. And so at that point, Daniel goes into hysterical praise with what you see on the screen right now. This is the most beautiful prayer. Praise be to the name of God. He changes times. He deposes kings. He raises others. He gives wisdom. He gives knowledge. He reveals. He knows. I thank and praise you, God. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made us known to us the dream of the king. He was absolutely ecstatic and thrilled that God did this, and he was so thankful for it. So Daniel goes back to Arioch and says, don't kill everybody. Take me to the king, and I will interpret the dream for him. Okay? Lessons learned. Thoughts. I've had more time to think about this than you, so some of these things may not be readily apparent, but I think when we bring them out, it'll make some sense to you. Speak loud, Fiona.
Always do. Saying thank you is always a good idea. The gratitude that is built in someone's heart when you say thank you for what God has given you continues to manifest itself, and continues to expand in who you are. Daniel identified to God his thankfulness for what God had done for him. As we live our lives and express that same gratitude to God on an ongoing basis for what he does for us, it continues to fill us and make us more whole. This, the takeaway for me here is always a thank you.
That was my closing point on this. So thank you, Fiona. You beat me to it. Yes, ma'am.
So your reference to the end of Daniel 1, which if you look at it, when he was examining these newbies who had come into his kingdom, and he says, he talked with them and found none equal to them. In every matter of wisdom and understanding, he found them 10 times better than everyone else. Hey, clearly they weren't there when he brought in the magicians to tell him his dream. And I've always kind of wondered why he didn't think of them if they're 10 times better. And I guess it's just the emotional state he was in. But the fact that when he asked the king for a favor, the king granted it, was based on number one, them proving themselves to begin with.
Mhm.
And then number two, the relationship. He was able to walk right in the first time. And so, as you commented about with Esther, you know, having been established and then having the relationship enabled him to get the favor, plus God being on his side, obviously.
Yeah. Have you guys been reading my notes? I'm going to come back to you, I promise. This is phenomenal. I love it. Okay. I don't even know how to say it. It's just the one thing I want to say is relationships matter. Relationships matter. And then thank you, but a couple more on that. But yes, who was it? You? Yes.
There are two things here that I would like to mention.
Okay.
One is the courage that Daniel had, like Esther. It was an act of courage, but that was based on the trust that he had on God. Like, I know my God can give me this answer, so I need some more time. I need some time to do it. And the other thing that is like that I think about when I read this is like he has a group of friends that he could pray with, and he could rely on. Let's pray together. He says that he went back home, explains the problem to his friends, and then they pray about it. So I think it's just beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Yes, Rich.
I was gonna say the benefit of group prayer.
Yeah. The group prayer. One of the things I wrote down, the first two comments I had, diplomacy and the word courteous boldness, which makes no sense. But he was assertive. Notice he didn't whine around. He was assertive. He went straight to the king. Okay. He knew he had the information, knew he had God. It allowed him to do that. And he took advantage of the relationship, et cetera, et cetera. Then when he got done, he thanked God. So love it. And notice one final thing. Prayer was the first recourse, not the last resort. Heard the saying, well, we've done all we can do. I guess all we can do is pray. Guilty as charged. Sorry. Been there, done that. And this is why these types of things are good for us to continue to do it, because it just demonstrates the value of having that be the big kahuna of what we do, not the thing that we do when we can't figure out anything else. All right, we're going to move on to the next section where Daniel tells the king the dream. Okay, so where do we end up? Arioch, don't kill anybody. So now, see if you can pick up a slightly different change in behavior here. So Arioch quickly took Daniel to the king, and he said, I have found one of the captives from Judah who will tell the king the meaning of the dream. This has, I think what I'm about to tell you has absolutely no bearing on this story, but it's just fascinating to me. Daniel already went to see the king. The king gave him, Arioch was nowhere in the picture. So Arioch is now claiming, obviously he got more time because Arioch didn't kill him. So Arioch must have known something. So now Arioch is going back and saying, I found this individual. Now, it may be also that Daniel is playing Arioch. He doesn't need Arioch to make him help this. But again, Daniel is diplomatic, and he recognizes that he is an exile living in a foreign land. And while he may have the good favor today, that could change in a heartbeat. And so therefore, having a good relationship with Arioch could always be helpful in the future. So there's wisdom in how he's going about this stuff and recognizing the political realities of what he's dealing with. So they get to the king. After Arioch has claimed credit for this, the king says, can you tell me the dream and what it means? And Daniel responded as follows. He said, King, there are no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or fortune tellers who can reveal the king's secret. Let's stop right there. That should sound familiar. Did you just hear that a few verses ago? Let's look at it again. What do the astrologers say in verse 10? No one on earth can tell the king his dream, and no king has ever asked. So Daniel and his peers in the advisory group are absolutely in lockstep. But there's a fundamental difference, isn't there? Okay. On the right-hand side, no one except the gods, plural. And oh, by the way, they don't live with us. Daniel says, but there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the future. Now I will tell you your dream and the vision you saw you lay in your bed. Fundamental difference between the right and the left. On the right-hand side, there is no relationship. The gods are somewhere up here. They don't reside among us. Okay. Okay. Daniel says there is a God. And oh, by the way, Nebuchadnezzar, he loves you. And he wants to help you understand what's troubling you.
To that point, I find it interesting that Daniel decided he wanted to lay that out for Nebuchadnezzar before telling him the dream. He could have just walked in and told him the dream and moved on. But it was important to him for Nebuchadnezzar to understand the source and the power from which he was speaking. And I think that by laying that foundation before the conversation even took place, it changed Nebuchadnezzar's mind and understanding as much as the words that Daniel was sharing with him. So I think it's very important, the sequence in which Daniel laid out what he was sharing with the king.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful thing.
I think it's also a little subtle point there that Daniel doesn't say, and he's revealed to me the future. He says he revealed it to you.
Yes.
And he's given me the key to tell you what
Mm.
it means.
It is so cool. Sorry, I lost my track. Here we go. Well, Daniel responded. Okay. Yeah, the fundamental difference. Now we get to, now this is where he starts. And he's about to tell him what the dream was, but there's one more thing kind of in the same line as what Fiona just said. We go to verse 30. Verse 30, which I don't have on the screen. It is not because I am wiser than anyone else that I know the secret of your dream, but because God wants you to understand what was in your heart. Now, that's what the New Living says. The New Living says, what was in your heart. The NIV says, what was in your mind.
What went through your mind?
Okay, in your mind. Yes, Carly.
The Revised King James says, you may know the thoughts of your heart.
Okay, yeah. It is so abundantly clear that God is chasing Nebuchadnezzar. He is reaching out to him and he desperately wants to have a relationship with him. We'll get there in a second. Sorry, I just had a thought. Okay, so Daniel then continues. He then says, he goes through and says, look, you had a large statue, it had a head of gold, it had a chest of arms in silver. Now let's pull this up here. There we go. We've seen hundreds of these. So you had a statue, you had a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, thighs of bronze, legs of iron, partly of iron and clay. And while you were watching, a rock not cut by human hands struck the feet of the statue and the whole thing collapsed. The wind swept away what was left, not leaving a trace. The rock that struck became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. That's the dream. There you go. Couple of lessons here, but I think we've touched on it. Number one, Ariok. Don't credit for something that somebody else did. It's always going to come back to bite you. Okay, if I'm working for Mr. Werner back here and he comes to me and says, hey, Kelly, I heard something really, really good happened. And for some reason, he thinks that I'm the cause of that. And I allow him to think that when it's not true. Ultimately, if he finds out differently, he's going to lose trust. It is stupid to take credit for something when it's not yours to take. Okay, it just is. And I wish I had learned that in my 20s and not later. Daniel shows genuine concern for the other wise men. Okay, God's showing concern for them too. He made it very clear that God did all the work and he was just the messenger. Okay, so that is the lessons learned from that section. So now we need to go on to the explanation of the dream. So we're now into verses 36 to 45. And I love how this starts. Daniel said, this was the dream, and now we will interpret it. Well, who's we? Is anybody else standing there next to him that Nebuchadnezzar can see? So he has, as Fiona said, he laid the groundwork. This is all about God. I'm not anything special. It's all about God. And now we are going to tell you what that thing means. And oh, by the way, he didn't stop and ask, by the way, was that the dream? He didn't ask, does that sound familiar? He went. He told him and he went on. But now he continues and he backs off and he continues with his diplomacy. Oh, king, you are the king of kings. So he is demonstrating, I mean, the kid's 18 years old and clearly he's got God in his mind and his heart, but he is demonstrating such mastery of the human psyche. It is just a beautiful thing because he knows he's trying to get he's got Nebuchadnezzar's attention. Well, now wait is, oh, king, you are the king of kings. Okay, that's going to get Nebuchadnezzar's attention. He's going to be really listening now, but the God of heaven has given you the dominion. He is the source of all power. And he tells the king directly that his power and right to sovereignty is from God. So then he continues, king, you're the head of gold. Okay. Another kingdom will rise. A third kingdom will follow. A fourth kingdom, as strong as iron, will crush and break all the others. However, the iron and the clay mean it will be divided kingdom, partly strong and partly brittle. It won't be as united as it was before. But God will set up the kingdom that will never be destroyed. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of the mountain, not by human hands. The great God of heaven has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true and its interpretation is trustworthy. Confidence, clarity. Notice, Only 2 kingdoms were identified in this. He didn't go through like we typically do, and we will eventually go through and give the lineage of all this. Say, king, here you are. You're the head of gold. Eventually, you're going to get succeeded. But at the end, this thing is going to come in. And this is the result. So, king, you're important. What's really important is this stuff. This thing. Again, God is chasing Nebuchadnezzar. He is chasing him. He wants to have a relationship with him. Comments, questions on that? A couple of quotes that I found this week that may give us a couple of questions to talk about. I'm going to go past this. It's just where he went through and emphasized the first. Can we make it cooler in here, anybody? Is that a possibility? This is from Ellen G. White in Education. It says, in the Word of God only is this clearly set forth. Here it is shown that the strength of nations, as of individuals, is not found in the opportunities or facilities that appear to make them invincible. It is not found in their boasted greatness. It is measured by the fidelity in which they fulfill God's purpose. Think about that for a second. We're going to come back. It is measured by the fidelity. She has a very interesting way of writing. It's hard to understand, but this one, it is measured by the fidelity in which they fulfill God's purpose. This is from Zdravko. The clear lesson taught in this text is that all attempts to unite humanity outside of God are illusionary. Even a hectic end-time rush to conclude alliances will not result in lasting unity. The only kingdom that will endure forever is of heavenly origin. Okay, here's the question. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, yes or no, or abstain. And you can't say, well, what, but if, You got to go yes, no, abstain. All right. Is God controlling everything? Come on. Okay, all right. Or is he allowing choice and result? Oh, hang on. Anybody want to say no? Rich says no. Les says no. Okay. Sorry. Let's back up. Let's start over. Recount. Thank you. It's a good season for that, isn't it? Okay. Is God controlling everything? Yes. Raise your hand. Okay. No. Abstain. Boy, okay, you guys have an opinion. That's cool. Okay, I like that. Okay. Next question. Is he allowing choice and the resulting things to happen? Yes. Okay. No. Saying, all right. So we're unanimous on the second one. Let's ask the question together. Okay. Is God controlling everything, or is he allowing choice and resulting things to happen? Was that a yes, Randall, or was that a? Hang on, we're going to come back. I anticipate this is going to generate discussion that's going to take us rest on. So, earthly kingdoms, are they circumstantial or are they God appointed? God appointed. Okay. Did anybody say no to God's not controlling things and didn't say yes to the earthly kingdoms God appointed? From the front, is God controlling everything, or is he allowing a choice and resulting things to happen? Yes. He is controlling everything, and he is allowing choice, everything to happen. Don't ask me to explain it. I got no clue. I have no idea. But that's what I believe. John and then Rich.
Just a clarifying question. When you say God is controlling everything, are you talking about the universe or are you talking about the earth? It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference.
I told you could ask me a question. I was thinking about.
No, I'm asking, just a clarifying question. It's the earth.
Yeah, that's, yeah, let's keep it on the earth.
Yeah.
Would you rephrase the question?
Tom,
You know, a number of years ago, I did some research on the number of Adventist healthcare facilities that failed. And inside and outside of North America, it was 3 pages, single space. That was quite some time ago. Today, it would be a longer list. And I believe that those entities had people involved who were praying earnestly, working hard, that they wanted good things to happen, and they failed. And so I asked myself, how could that happen? And the conclusion I came to, and it is scriptural, was that God is able and on occasion chooses to intervene, but rarely intervenes in bad markets or with bad management. It's really, mind blowing to contemplate all of the failures that occurred by really wonderful, dedicated people who I know were praying earnestly.
yeah, Rich.
When you comment about nations, I made a comment about this God point all that power developments through the last 100 years. I think he doesn't intervene in all cases, but does in some, just like Tom said. I mean, he didn't intervene in Germany and save the Jews. But then, other countries have had success. Maybe that's, so it's really a mixed bag. And you just can't. His character just doesn't allow him to pick and choose. Allows him to pick and choose, but he can't answer every prayer, or then his character isn't manifested through the Son.
So if you believe this, it is measured by the, I made it an English major, it is measured by the fidelity with which they fulfill God's purpose.
Kelly,
Yes, Joe.
I wrestle with this, and I'm the coach.
One more time, louder.
I wrestle with how God interferes in our daily lives and how He answers prayers. There was an ad, a commercial on television just a week ago or so, one of these political things.
Yeah.
Where a woman is talking to the senator, the person who's running for the Senate of this state. And the woman is talking about how God healed her from cancer and how God answered her prayers about cancer. And I could not find the remote quickly enough to turn that stupid thing off and change it. I mean, really, God answered your prayers about cancer, but did not answer the other guy's prayers about cancer. What nonsense is that?
Or a particular political ad that indicated this person was anointed by God. to
Yes.
have Such and such a position. No names being used. however.
Along those same lines, when Ian went through, we were out of the country. And so when we got back, you never know the storm that happened to us. But yet we know that people to the south and the west suffered mass devastation. And I'm talking to some of those people. And when you want to say, well, hey, Kelly, how do things go at your house? You're tempted to say, oh, well, thank God he blessed us and nothing happened. What does that mean? He didn't bless. So I'm saying we got lucky. Because I just don't know how you deal with that. Yes, Elmer.
So with your children, how many times did you want to save them from their own misadventure? But they had to go through it in order to learn. And that started when you had to teach them what's hot and they cannot touch it when they were infants, all the way up. So I think God does not intervene every time. He has your ultimate soul in mind, and he wants you to be a part of Eden in an earth made new. But we've got to get through this life.
And we're going to I'll come to you, Bob.
just said is this, Elmer. Here's mine. Kingdoms come, kingdoms go. Interesting, you know, somewhere in here is Hitler, somewhere in here is Saddam Hussein. He left Hitler killed all these Jews. I don't know. This is what I do know. And that's what's important. And all the rest of it, we just can't explain. We just cannot.
Yes, Bob.
Well, I mean, this is a great story, right? I mean, it's got to rank in your top 5, top 10 favorite stories because it's just cool. Except in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus says it's a wicked and adulterous nation that looks for signs and wonders. Oh, I love this. The signs and wonders are so cool. Am I part of the wicked and adulterous nation? It's like he kind of wants people to be faithful, even if things turn, even if your institution collapses. It's like the faithfulness of the people that ran that, the earnestness of the prayer is still real, but it didn't work out the way they wanted. You know, I love the happy stories. Don't get me wrong. They're not all happy. Come on, we all know that.
No, they are not. They are not.
Got it.
Yes, please.
I find it interesting that the only thing that Nebuchadnezzar found relative to him was that he was going to be overthrown. He built this next image to his photo. And so what's the point of the rest of this? The point of the rest of this has to be for us, not really.
Yes, Barbara.
So Nebuchadnezzar is a very interesting character. I am intrigued when you said how God's pursuing him. He really wanted a relationship with him, which he does with us too. It's interesting because at the end of the explanation of this dream, Nebuchadnezzar says, God's wonderful, God's great, everybody worship him. And then as this gentleman, I couldn't see him, said,
His name is Les.
okay, I couldn't see him.
Les, could you stand?
Then he builds this image, and when some of Daniel's friends wouldn't bow down, so then he throws them in the fire, and then they survive. And then he says, "Oh, you know, everybody worship God because He's great." And then he had another problem, and God had to make him an animal for 7 years. And if you read at the end of chapter 4, at the end of that, it really sounds like he was converted, and he's going to be in heaven, and we're going to get to talk to him. So, but we're the same. Oh, you know, our relationship with God is up and down, up and down. And, you know, it's very, very frustrating to me that after all these 68 years, I still do that. And so this is an interesting story on many levels.
I really am upset that you've been reading my notes. Yes.
I made this point last Sabbath at the park, but there weren't very many of you there. I've been reading 4 commentaries on Daniel, and at least in a couple of them, they make the point that this is really a huge, great controversy element to Daniel. And it comes out here in the point you just made. He identified the head of gold. You, King Nebuchadnezzar, are the head of gold. And a stone is going to come and crush the feet of ceramic and iron and set up a new kingdom, the kingdom of God. And so that, and then in Revelation, when we get to that in a few weeks, they're going to talk about Babylon. Babylon is fall and all that stuff. So this controversy between Babylon and the kingdom of God is being set up here in Daniel. This is about the great controversy between good and evil.
Indeed, indeed. So Barbara just did a great summary of this, but I want to come back and emphasize it. So this is the last 4 sections. Daniel, King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and order than offering. Surely your God is the God of gods and the revealer of mysteries, etc., etc., etc. He did wonderful things. I want to go back to what Barbara said. A couple of points on that. The world's most powerful ruler falls prostrate before an exiled teenager. God is glorified, Daniel is honored. He forgot his friends. What a fabulous story this is. I mean, I'm sure Joel Osteen, this is on his playlist all the time. If you do these things, wonderful things are going to happen to you. Okay? There's a lot of parallels here to Joseph, right? Okay, wonderful things happen there. Does it always happen that way? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Question here, was Nebuchadnezzar converted? Who all says yes? No, Rich, yes or no? Who thinks Nebuchadnezzar was converted here? I got a couple hands. Anybody say no? Who's abstaining? It feels like it. I believe he was. He absolutely was. Read chapter 3. Read chapter 4. He sure isn't acting like it, just like you. You believe in God, don't you? But do you act poorly sometimes?
Yes.
What we see, listen, he you haven't watched Lauren Luck because he always says only the nicest things about us. This is the fascinating thing for me in this thing is there is no question in my mind that Nebuchadnezzar at that point knew and believed, but that doesn't mean that he still didn't have a massive ego that he was dealing with. Okay, and it is going to be manifested in the next 2 chapters. And so that is just looking in the mirror for me. Go ahead. I'll come back.
Was he converted or convinced? Because it looks like conversion came more towards the end.
Okay, fair enough.
But he was sure that there was this story, but he wanted to change it. You know what? I don't want to be ruling just for. I want my inheritance. I want my family to be. I want Babylon to last forever. I know this stone is going to happen. It looks like, but I want to be the only one. Like Babylon is the only one.
Yeah, he was still. He was pretty enthralled with himself. Wanted to keep that going.
And our ego always puts us in trouble. So just for us to remember that.
Yeah.
Having big ego doesn't help.
One of the commentaries I was reading last night said that Nebuchadnezzar was a polytheist, he believed in many gods. So after this, this miraculous revelation, he said, "Wow, this is a God I need to add to my pantheon," and not legal.
Well, we're gonna watch the love story continue between God and Nebuchadnezzar over the next 2 weeks. So come back. Terry's going to be here, and he'll take you through that. In the meantime, I continue to be very excited that God doesn't know everything. Right? Aren't you excited that there's at least 4 things that God in His sovereignty does not know? Let's say this all together. God does not know a sin He does not hate. God does not know a sinner He does not love. God does not know a sin He won't forgive. God does not know a better time than now. Amen. Great to see you all. Have a wonderful day. Carlene, we love you. Don't forget your flowers.